John Mackenzie was born in January 1948, just as our parents were moving into their first home. His arrival was a great joy to Mom and Dad. But to his older brother, that's me there on the right, it was something of a disappointment. I expected a playmate, but instead I got a little runt who couldn't walk and had nothing interesting to say. But as the years passed, John learned a few words, and he did acquire some driving skills. He became a sharp dresser, a young fashion plate, really. He was the first in his class to know how to tie a bow tie, and every button on his sport coat was always attached to the right hole. Whether it was a pre-Easter photo shoot at home or an exotic transoceanic cruise, John was always dressed for the occasion. He developed early in life the sartorial style for which he's become so well known in recent years. It wasn't long before John began to get more Valentine's cards on February 14th than anyone else in his class. The sparkling blue eyes, the cute little nose, and the perfectly coiffed hair were, everyone had to admit, irresistible. By the mid-1950s, my brother and I had become inseparable. Whether it was standing by the chimney, waiting all night for Santa, blaming the dog for eating all the chocolate chip cookies, or finding new ways to test Mom's laundry skills, we were partners in all we did. In 1956, the Mackenzie family moved to a little country village in Massachusetts. Now, this was Dad's idea because he'd learned at an independent school there, Governor Dummer Academy, gave full scholarships every year to a few boys from the town who scored the highest on a competitive exam. No pressure there. In 1961, John took the exam and he made the cut. He liked the school and he began to thrive. He also began to grow, almost 5 inches after his freshman year. Suddenly at age 15, John was 6'5" and not altogether clumsy. He could chew gum and walk at the same time, if he didn't walk too fast. He began to get some playing time on the varsity basketball team, and by his junior year, he was a genuine star. In his senior year, he teamed up with 2 other players of similar size, and they terrorized the New England Independent School League. John fit in a little studying around his other activities at Governor Dummer, and in 1965, he was admitted to Bowdoin College in Maine. At Bowdoin, he majored in government, led the Student Judiciary Board, served as a dormitory proctor, and, oh yes, he played a little hoop. In his junior and senior years, the Bowdoin Polar Bears were one of the best Division III teams in the country. John was the center, the captain, and he set rebounding records at Bowdoin that still stand 43 years later.
John played basketball at Bowdoin for 4 years, along with myself and 3 or 4 other guys who made it through all 4 years together. A lot of people don't know this, but John was a leading rebounder in Bowdoin's history, still has many of the records. Our freshman year, John, we were undefeated. John was a big part of that team. John probably started every Bowdoin game that I can remember for 4 years. Our junior year in college, we were nationally recognized as a Division II Team of the Year. People have always asked what John's nickname is and was, and we all had nicknames, but he had a couple of sort of easy ones. Big John was one the coach used to call him a lot. We kind of called him Big John. The one John never liked was Moose, and we called John Moose in college, but he always was, he put up with that in college. And he really wasn't a moose. He was a very skinny, 6'5" athletic individual who today would be a point guard for somebody. Just back then, there weren't a lot of 6'5" people.
John graduated from Bowdoin in June 1969. Later that year, he took a job teaching and coaching at Canterbury School in Connecticut and began an independent school career that continues to this day. John became an uncle during these years, and he taught his nephews the fundamentals of sports. He entertained them with his stories. He took them sailing and regaled them with his Billy Crystal imitation. John moved to Belmont Hill School on the outskirts of Boston in 1970, and, in addition to his classroom duties, began a long and successful career as a basketball and football coach. While at Belmont Hill, John was appointed head of the upper school and began his work as a school administrator, even as he continued to teach and coach. After 10 years at Belmont Hill, John was awarded a prestigious Klingensmith Fellowship, which allowed him a year at Teachers College, Columbia University, where he earned a master's degree. He moved in the following year to Milton Academy, where he was appointed head of the upper school. In the mid-1980s, the Board of Trustees at the Potomac School in McLean, Virginia, decided to add an upper school. They searched the country for the right person to design a building and a curriculum and to hire a faculty. John was hired for that job. After a year of planning and the addition of a new class each year, the Potomac Upper School was thriving. In 1990, John's career moved in the direction where it seemed always to be headed. He was appointed head of Worcester Academy in Massachusetts. This was a school with many challenges, not the least of which was an aging physical plant in a part of an old city that had seen better days. But John rose to the challenge, as he always does, and he left Worcester Academy in 1997, a much stronger place than the one he had come to lead 7 years earlier. And then he heard about a headmaster job in, of all places, Columbus, Ohio.
First, of course, we formed a search committee and hired a search consultant. And I remember when the consultant gathered the committee together, they said they had very good news. And the good news was that it was a very deep and rich talent pool that year, which apparently varies from year to year. So we were inundated with a list of very qualified candidates, I think 8 or 9 or 90 of them in all. So the work of the committee was to go through that list and winnow it down to a manageable level. Ultimately, we got to 3 final candidates and invited all 3 of those candidates to visit us here on campus. And it was a fairly rigorous process of meeting with students and faculty and administration and alumni and parents. And it became clear very early on that John Mackenzie towered above the other candidates. I mean, both literally and figuratively. He's a tall guy.
In 1997, John Mackenzie, with wife Kate and 6-month-old Scott, arrived in Central Ohio to begin his tenure as Columbus Academy's 7th permanent headmaster. His steely-eyed demeanor spoke volumes about the work ahead. No one is quite sure whether it was his athletic career or the demands of the job that led to some nagging lower back problems, but on and off the court, Columbus began to feel Mackenzie's influence.
Oh, well, John, East Coast, some would say snob, pretty much accurate. But, that dry East Coast type of humor, type of personality, not much emotion. So he's here at the Academy, he's in Columbus, Ohio, and one day we're in front of a group of alumni and he's talking in somewhat derogatory fashion about Ohio State football. So of course I had to pull him aside afterwards and with a club of some kind bash him over the head and say, look, you don't do that in Columbus, Ohio. I said what's even more embarrassing is the fact that nobody knows what the hell Bowdoin is. What is Bowdoin? Is that, we think it's a noun, it could be a verb, but I told him nobody knows Bowdoin. If you said you went to Columbia where you got your master's, that's better, but don't say Bowdoin. Nobody knows what that is, and here you are making fun of Ohio State football. It was a rocky start.
The late 90s saw the construction of Academy Hall, the arrival of Mandarin Chinese, and an uncanny ability by the new headmaster to remember names and faces, and even more importantly, to demonstrate an authentic desire to come to truly know his students. As the century came to an end, Mackenzie, in concert with trustees and teachers, continued to position Academy for the millennium with significant investments in technology in all 3 divisions of the school. The start of the 2001 school year reminded us suddenly and tragically of Academy's place in the larger world. And like all great school leaders, John steered Academy through complicated and rough waters as reality informed our curriculum and compassion fueled our sense of community. And even amid fundraising efforts, construction projects, and a desire to create a more diverse and dynamic institution, it was his unwavering commitment to our dress code that ultimately brought true joy to Academy students. In 2002, Columbus Academy launched the ambitious Advancing the Quest campaign. The goal of the campaign was to raise $17 million, 3 times more than any previous campaign in the school's history. Amid the flurry of campaign activities, Academy never wavered from its focus on the broad-based mission of the school. 2003 saw 37% of the class of 2004 recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. State championships in football and field hockey, the first ever African-American chair of the Board of Trustees, the biggest graduating class, 83, in the school's history, and an expanding and child-centered lower school that allowed for smaller class size and more differentiated instruction. And while institutional success remained and continues to remain a hallmark of John's tenure, it was his unwavering commitment to his son Scott that reminded us all of his soulful nature and dedication to family. Even to this day, when John sits down next to his 16-year-old son, it is the look of absolute adoration from years ago that flashes across Scott's face.
My dad means a lot to me. When I think about my dad, I think a lot about our relationship as father and son, which is really good, and our relationship at school, which is a little bit different, but it's really special because I get to have my dad in part of both life. On the night when there might be a snow day the next day, I get like 800 texts from my friends and everyone at school trying to tell me to get my dad to call a snow day, and it's really obnoxious, and it's not fun. So snow days end up being kind of a bad thing for me.
The first decade of this century continued to unfold. John's leadership and skills as an administrator continued to be ubiquitous as the capital campaign exceeded the goal by over $500,000, and the school's enrollment grew to over 1,000 students. Faculty compensation, financial aid, and significant expenditures in professional development continue to define John's vision for Academy. As the decade came to a close, Academy continued to celebrate the concept of community with the expansion of efforts by PACA and connections with our growing body of alumni. The start of the next decade saw John steering Academy through its 100th anniversary celebration. A gifted public speaker, Mackenzie owned the podium as Academy celebrated 100 years of success.
I don't think people know what it takes to be John Mackenzie, headmaster of Columbus Academy. But it takes a lot of time and lots of energy and stamina. John gets up early. He likes to be here before everyone else. He feels like he should. So he's here early, he makes the coffee, and he gets going. He works all day, sometimes back to back to back meetings. And some of the things he handles so flawlessly, I'm really amazed. He really can handle it without getting ruffled. But usually after school, he goes to a game. He tries to see every team. Then he comes home, sometimes not, for dinner, and often comes back here for a concert, a game, a meeting. And then after that, he goes to his home office, and he works in his home office. He answers email, and the writing he does. It is so amazing, and he spends so much time writing those beautiful articles that all of you read and all of those speeches.
While celebrating past triumphs, John also pushed Academy to consider the complexities of Academy's future. Under his watchful eye, Academy set the stage for a new campaign, a massive shift in the way technology is integrated into the school day, a challenge to truly diversify our teaching faculty and student body, and like so many of the great leaders of our time, he pushed us as a community on every level, and then he bolts on us. Actually, it is with an unrepayable debt of gratitude that we acknowledge the current strength of Academy. It is also our collective acknowledgement that this strength is most visible in the sense of community that has come about from his creation of a shared and global vision, his steadfast commitment to ethics and integrity, and most importantly, John's affection for and understanding of children. It is these qualities that have defined his decision-making and left Academy in a substantially better place than he found it.
John has overseen tremendous growth at our school, but through his example and his actions, he's ensured that our school, as large as it is, has remained a community. And to me, that's his most important legacy.
It is our unified and authentic hope that with his wife Susie and son Scott, John celebrate the gift of time that comes with the completion of a job well done. That perhaps while basketball may be part of his past, golf may define his future. Although those of us who golf with John can't say enough about his basketball prowess. Lastly, however, is that as a consultant to other schools and other school leaders, John inspires other individuals and institutions to push themselves beyond traditional boundaries to a place of excellence, a place where he has brought all of us here.
He has certainly led this school with passion and with humor, and I'm just very proud to have been a part of bringing John to the Academy.
He's so proud of what he's done here, and he's really put so much of his life and time into this place, and he's gotten that much and more back.
I'm gonna miss him being here, seeing him every day. It's gonna be different, but I'll still see him all the time, obviously, because he's my dad. It'll just be different.
Well, after 14 years of working together, I'm not going to say goodbye to John because I know he's going to be around. And knowing how much John loves to play golf and that he's probably going to really drive me crazy asking me to play a lot of golf. John, what I'm going to say to you is it's not goodbye, it's I'll see you on the first tee.